Tiankai Feng, welcome to Super Data Brothers. How are you, my friend?
Hi, thank you so much. It's good to be back. Yeah, I'm very good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. We were talking before we went live about your incredible background, and
Yes.
I don't know if you still
Show it
have
again?
that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. Show everybody.
This is the customized Super Mario figure I have. It was one of the first birthday presents my wife, back then girlfriend, gave me because of my huge Super Mario fandom. And since this is a Super Data Bros show, right? I kind of just thought this is now the right chance to show it. And here I can express my full fandom to all of you.
That's just so cool. Like, what a cool thing to have. And the story behind it's great too, right? It's like your wife made it for you.
Exactly.
Incredible. Welcome back to the show. I wanted to have you back. Last time you were on the show, it was just such a great conversation, and I think the conversation started by your book, Humanizing Data Strategy, which we have here. My copy of it. I highly recommend it. I even did a review on TikTok of it that got suggested to Tiankai, totally independent. Like I didn't tell him about it or anything. It just came across his feed, so that's incredible. It's a great book. So we're going to dive into it a little more and just talk about how things have gone since the book came out and the ways in which you see the data industry changing, especially with with AI. And I want to get your take on where we are with AI and data, and is it starting to become a little more real? And we'll get into all those things. Now, folks, this is a live show. It's a lot more fun for Tiankai and I, and a lot more fun for you if you get your questions and comments and feedback into the chat. As always, if you let us know where you're watching from, we will give you a shout out. If you're wondering where Eric is, Eric, the other Super Data brother, he's at a work event today that he couldn't get out of, and so it's just Tiankai and I holding down the fort in Eric's absence. But get your questions and comments and reactions into the chat, and we will make sure to read them to Tiankai so that you can get them answered. And while we're waiting for those to start rolling in, one more thing. Of course, I have to thank today's sponsor, Good Data. Good Data is an analytics platform focused on producing analytics products at scale. The big problem that Good Data will solve for you is exactly that. So it's, if what you need is to build some dashboards off some spreadsheets for your boss, there's lots of tools that are good at that. But if what you need is to build analytics products for your customers, vendors, suppliers that scale efficiently, effectively, that you can manage more like software and less like traditional BI, and that allow you to deliver value quickly and iteratively in a way that is going to really delight the people who need to consume your data, Good Data is the platform for you. So thank you, Good Data, for sponsoring season 3 of the Super Data Brothers show. And with that, let's get started, man. So the book came out, when it came out, like
end
summer
of July
last year?
last year.
Yeah. And I was really excited to read it then. I just thought, the title alone, and it's got like the cool art on the cover too. I'm a sucker for good art. Was intriguing. And so I read it. I loved it. We had you on the show. What has the overall reception been to the book, and how are things going now that you're coming up on a year post-launch here in a couple months?
Absolutely. Yeah, the reactions to it were mostly very positive, which I'm really, really happy about. In some ways, some people were saying they felt really validated in their thoughts, and but in a way better expressed than what they had in their thoughts, so they could now express it through the structure of my book and the frameworks that I gave to talk to their stakeholders in a better way, right? Others were surprised and didn't consider all of it before, and they were like, "Oh, this has been missing all along, and now I finally get how to actually focus more on the human side of data." And now I understand why things have been failing so much, because I didn't understand how this works. There was a very, very small part of it that was not a big fan of it.
Yeah.
Those were like a few, maybe one-star reviews on Amazon, most of them being anonymous. But the most funny one I got as a one-star review was just with the one sentence, "Marxism for data." It's a hilarious comment, because of course I have no political anything in my book,
Nothing.
but the fact that it was about something about Marxism, putting it in a negative light to describe my book about it, felt very funny. It was so funny that I even thought this is probably better marketing than anything I could do, because the sentence alone intrigues people. Like, what is that book about? Why does that person say it's Marxism for data? So in a way, I mean, there's always going to be haters, right? There's always going to be some people that disagree, that think I'm over humanizing potentially. But I'm glad that most people are actually very much on board with what.
Yeah, I saw that Marxism for data review, and I got a chuckle out of it too. I don't know what would, because you're right. There's really nothing, certainly nothing. There's nothing political in it at all, let alone Marxist, right?
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
I mean, what do you, why do you think that was? Is it just like, because was this person's just felt it was too touchy feely, and they associate that with Marxism, or like what do you think maybe led this individual to conclude that?
Yeah, potentially. I feel like, I mean, because I talk a lot about empathy and that we are unique and that we should focus on each other and understand each other and so on, which in a very, if someone is politically very much extremist kind of inclined, they might get triggered by it, right? Like, no, I do what I want. I don't care about everyone else. I'm just going to do
Right.
my thing, right? So probably there was some kind of transferring their thoughts and emotions to a different topic. Um, Otherwise, I couldn't understand. There's no other context than that one sentence, right? So I have no idea where this comes from. Otherwise, yeah.
Well, I am kind of want to hear, have you had any? I know you've talked to a lot of people who said, "Wow, this kind of opened my eyes to maybe some of the reasons that our data practice is struggling."
Mhm.
Have you had any stories from people who have maybe put some of the ideas into practice, and how that has affected their data practice?
Yes, absolutely. So there actually was a bigger sports brand where the person working on their data strategy had actually told me that they directly quoted me in the document they've been working on. And that was the part about how business acumen and data literacy have to be balanced to each other, right? And how there needs to be efforts made consistently that data people understand the business and business people understand data. And basically create like a effort to let them understand each other through community of practice or kind of academy programs and so on. So that was very nice to hear. And from others also, I basically what I got a lot about was that graphic about the data purpose, right? So basically, what is exciting to do, what is aligned with business objectives, what is allowed to do, and what is feasible to do. And
Yeah.
that Venn diagram really helped them just to frame their thoughts and also to get the right stakeholders in to actually make these decisions up front on what the purpose is and not be stopped afterwards because they didn't consider someone. And lastly, I think it was really about the creativity part of my book too, where a lot of people were, this was the one C that people were surprised about most often. They didn't expect the C to pop up, but because I'm me, right, and I'm a creative person, I made sure that it's in. But it opened some people's eyes too, right, where they're like, oh, actually, I realized I personally need to be more creative and I need to consciously do it more, and I have it in me. And now I'm more innovative than before, right? So that was one of the other things. So all in all, those were, I think, the highlights of how people applied it.
Do you think, I mean, the data obviously comes out of, there's, like a technical bar you kind of have to clear, right? In
Hmm.
order to get into the industry to begin with,
Right.
in many cases. I mean, do you think, And I certainly felt early in my career that creativity was not particularly recognized or valued. Do you think that's changing?
I definitely think it's changing. And since you mentioned upfront already AI too, right? I think it's probably one of the unique factors that still makes us human if you compare to all the AI productivity based stuff that's currently going on, right? In a way, we are the only ones who have original ideas and not just basically prompting it to something and let it generate based on things that an AI model learned from stuff. Humanity, and that makes humanity special, has original ideas. So our creativity is going to be more important than ever, I think, right? Because if everything else that is routine and manual can be handed over more and more to basically AI stuff, AI agents, and so on, then what we are left with is our own thinking, and that's creativity is a big part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I agree, and I really see a lot of. I mean, I see that in kind of my own work, even that like I'm able to hand off a lot of stuff that I was not able to hand off in the past
Yeah.
to AI, and that helps. That helps me focus more on the thinking part, right, and less on
Yeah.
the busy work part of what I do. So, in your role, I mean, you're obviously an author.
Hmm.
You're, I mean, you also work at ThoughtWorks,
Yeah.
and you're correct me if I'm wrong. Your title there is like Director of Data Strategy and AI or something like
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in your role at ThoughtWorks, how do you, I mean, not just there, but in general, how do you see the kind of the rollout of AI going in data so far? What are we doing well, and what are we doing not so well?
Yeah, I mean, I think overall the hype around AI became more grounded recently, is what I would say about it. So, what started as like we can do everything with AI, now most people have turned it around and they realize they need some better foundations to actually make organizational specific value driving application with AI work, right? And that basically in reverse put some really strong focus on data governance again, right? And like data quality and all these kind of things, which wasn't really a big deal before, or was at least not as important anymore as before. So this having said, right, this connection now between having good data and that actually being the actual competitive advantage using AI in organizations is slowly being understood by everyone. And that now becomes a race of who's faster and making the data foundations better than the rest. Because all of the pre-trained models, they're all good enough to do anything, right? But what really matters is connecting this to your own contextual data and then making really great applications out of it. So that is on the one hand side the thing, and then that leads to this new concept of AI readiness, which I would say describe the whole year in, which is all about how do we get ready for AI, and that means like the data quality itself, having knowledge graphs and contextual information about the data, and then actually having the right technology also, of course, in place, and having the right kind of value use cases for AI as well. And yeah, that is like slowly happening now.
Do you see any kind of across different industries? Are there particular industries that you feel are ahead as far as AI readiness versus others?
I would say, I mean, generally the one that are more digital have always a head start, right? I mean, the
Yeah.
the tech industry is probably always better at this, has always been. Also already in data stuff, they have always been better. So that is, of course, always upfront. In other ways, I think it's the ones also that have more that always had customer service and focus and customer satisfaction focus because many of the use cases I'm seeing now are related to customer service, right? Like having a chatbot now that is helping to navigate smarter and faster for any kind of customer requests in retail, for example, or in financial services as well, or also in manufacturing, etc. So that is like one of the most frequent use cases I'm seeing. So if they always had customer service in mind, they already put efforts into having good interactions, and they have now all of the foundation to train basically also AI models to do it in a similar way, right? So in that way, I think those also have been successful. So yeah, otherwise it's very hard. I feel like also there are companies that not even got the data revolution right, And
Yeah.
now they want to even do AI, so it's like very hard for them to catch up nowadays.
I think Joe Reese posted a few months ago something about, like like you're trying to do AI, but you were never even able to do BI, right?
Yeah,
Um,
correct. Yeah.
and I understand many companies may look at AI as an opportunity to jump ahead.
Mhm.
Is that possible? Can you use AI to just skip a few steps, or do you really have to go through the foundational evolution in your data practice before you can really take advantage of AI?
I think it's somewhere in between, right? Because if you're clear at the very beginning what you want to use AI for specific steps in your value chain or specific use cases that you really see the biggest opportunity with, then you can also just start only fixing the foundation for that specific scope, right? It's not about all of the foundations all being ready, but you do it like one use case by use case, right? Which ideally then makes it a little bit faster. So in a way, then you basically start by doing the foundation right in a much smaller scope. You make the application run in the right way, and that then quicker actually generates the value for you, right? And I think in many cases nowadays it's more a productivity measure, right? So you save costs on staffing or people spending time manually doing things. That has always been, I think, the start of automation generally, right? And now that is also part of any AI efforts. But I'm actually waiting for more and more use cases that are actually generating new value, right? Like, when will we start actually seeing AI being used for more sales, for example, or employee satisfaction, or some kind of things that actually is not only decreasing the costs, but is actually increasing the revenue or other elements that are important as well.
Yeah, I'm waiting for that too. Like it seems obvious. I was at Data Council in Oakland,
Hmm.
3 weeks ago now, and it was very obvious there to me, at least, that where AI is having a huge impact right now is in developer tooling
Right.
and writing code in particular, and a few other things that are quite obvious. You see Duolingo's announcement that like we're firing all humans, which we'll see if they live to regret that or not. But and it's like the impact's obvious there.
Yeah.
But the rest of the use cases, where it comes to, like you said, customer satisfaction or employee satisfaction and retention, I am still kind of, I'm hopeful. It's like what I personally really want is something where I can just, it will buy flights for me, and it will
Hmm.
take into account when I like to leave and where I like to connect and where I like to sit and all that stuff, because I fly to Europe a lot for business.
Right.
And then just and then like it can find it for me instead of me going through Delta's, outbound flights for 3 days to try to find the right combination of, the seat, because I like to sit on the left hand side of the plane because I like to lean this way when I sleep on a red eye. And I just wanted to
Okay.
take all that into account, and like you go find the ticket.
Yeah.
Um,
Good point.
and just the use cases like that, I'm still kind of waiting on,
True.
the stuff that really helps you a lot in your day to day life. It's a very
Absolutely.
powerful search. It's
Yeah.
obviously great at vibe coding, and I think our LinkedIn integration isn't working properly because I can't highlight people's comments. But we have a Miko, friend of the show, Miko Yuck,
Okay.
in the chat here, and she says, yeah, she says what you did not invest in data will bite you in the butt now.
Yeah.
Is
Exactly.
is Miko's
Very well
quote.
put.
And I think
Yeah.
that's very true. Well, so
Yes.
what
Maybe, I mean, to your point though, maybe, right? So, especially when we are replacing human touch points with AI related touch points, right? What you described, for example, where customer service, where you would call someone maybe even in the past, or you
Mhm.
chat with a real person and you get something done. Now there's like a bot that is basically reacting to whatever you say, keyword based, prompt based, whatever, right? Um, but we're losing that more and more with the human touch, right? Because
Yeah,
if we are starting replacing touch points with AI things, then people are not feeling like they're interacting with human beings anymore. And in a way, that feels very something like an old person would say, right? Where we need the human touch. But I feel like as human beings, we kind of want it too, right? In a way, we always wanted some kind of a human touch still in there, and we just felt better that there was a person behind it that's doing it rather than some technical thing that might break or that doesn't really understand me emotionally, that is just doing what I'm telling it to do, and it still might be doing wrong. So I'm wondering, right, in the future, where if actually everyone is starting doing the same use cases and all of the touch points become only like chatbots, for example, then how do we even still measure customer service, right? Are the customers all equally satisfied or all equally dissatisfied because they're ending up only talking to bots now all of a sudden everywhere? So
Right.
is that really the point where we want to go? And as a human being, do I want to do it? I made really bad experiences now with recently trying to get the tires changed on my car, and I was always able to call the shop directly to make an appointment. Now there was a bot, and I spent 15 minutes instead of 1 minute talking to the bot to get me an appointment. It didn't work until I told it to connect me to the store anyway, and then I got it done. So
Yeah.
it's also a maturity thing, right? But I got really frustrated. Now I have a really bad impression of that bot, right? So it's kind of
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, you bring up a really good point, which is like if everybody's using the same models and has the same kind of chat interface as the touch point with the customer, then what becomes the differentiation,
exactly.
between in the customer service experience? And maybe it is there's actually you talk to a person, and the
Yeah.
companies that are able to offer that, will have a customer service edge versus the companies that
Right.
really invest only in the AI chat experience. Um,
Exactly.
I do wonder, you mentioned like something an old person would say. I mean, that's certainly something I wonder. Like my kids, are they going to have these feelings, or are they just going to say like, well, of course you're just talking to a robot, dad. Like, why would you want to talk to anything else?
Oh yeah,
Uh,
it becomes a new default, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's the thing where if people still decide to go into physical retail stores, it's because they want to get consulted by another salesperson actually about what to buy, right? Because they could might as well go online and do e-commerce and just look up the criteria and find the best product based on some reviews, right? But if they decide to go into a store, they still want to have that feeling. So it points to something, right? Where I think we need that human touch in one way or another, even if we don't want to admit it. And there's only as much productivity and being fast that is fulfilling us. But on the cost of losing all human connections and interactions, is that really worth it? I'm thinking, yeah.
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 Yeah. Probably not. Probably not. Um,
Yeah.
so, where do you see? I mean, on the topic of AI and AI adoption, we've talked
Mhm.
about a little bit about the use cases and the industries. I mean, do you see? Are there any really innovative use cases you're aware of that you could share with us that did something kind of outside of the obvious? Okay, the two obvious things are customer service, right? It answers basic Q&A and
Yeah.
it writes code. Those are the two really obvious things. Have you seen a third, oh, this was like a really cool, innovative use of it, or are we still waiting on that, in your opinion?
I can't actually remember. I think I saw entertaining use cases, but I
Yeah.
wouldn't say that they were really groundbreaking. At least not used and adopted by organizations and enterprises, right? I saw that more as experiments by just people who tried out things, and it's nice to play with, but it really doesn't help like enterprises to generate better value. And that I haven't seen yet. But randomly, actually, this morning when we talk about entertaining, I saw basically how someone recreated Clippy, the original icon, right, from old Windows, Microsoft Office,
Oh yeah.
right? But it has now, if you interact with it, basically the LLMs behind it that you can basically the newest model that you can connect to it. So basically, it's like a new thing that is on your desktop the whole time, and every time you click on it, you can just prompt it things. And it's only the retro nostalgic interface for people that still remember Clippy that can interact with it. But of course, just as an interface to existing models that are already there. And I mean, I'm laughing about it and I'm having fun with it, but then it's also only this fun for those 10 minutes, right? And then I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
that was fun.
Yeah,
Okay, no,
exactly.
I'm done.
It's just like the original Clippy. It's fun for 10 minutes and then you
Exactly.
then you shut it off.
Exactly. Exactly.
This is
Yeah.
a question, and folks, for those of you who are watching, this is a live show. This is pre-recorded, so if you have a question for Tiankai, get it in the chat, and I will ask it. This is Miko Yuck asking your take on so agentic AI. That's we hear a lot about agentic AI. and then MCP as well. What do you think of these two? I guess, what do you think of these two terms, and where do you see them going?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely all very well promising, and we all know that agentic AI, and then later on this year also MCP, they all got basically named as like the trend and the buzzword of the year, right? It feels like though with those, what is interesting is because they happen more in the background and not too much in front, right? Because in the end, what makes them so special is it's a very easy interface, either as like someone who is putting things in or getting things out of it, right? But what happens in the background is very much all automated, very well connected and autonomous, et cetera, and that makes it really interesting. I think with, generally, I think with these kind of things, there's a lot we can do. What I've seen only with organizations is they're trying it out right now too, right? Like what you call toying with that right now. That's why I'm seeing at least things are happening, but I still haven't seen it in reality, to be very honest. So like not something that went into production. Always do things like this is one experiment, there's a pilot here, there's another experiment here, but nothing actually in reality. But I'm happy to be convinced differently, right? It's just that at least within my bubble, I've not seen it actually happening and generate value in reality yet.
Do you, for anybody who's curious, can you this is not a trick question, although it might be. I feel like it. Can you define agentic AI? Because I find it's one of those terms when I like the term data product. When I talk to people about it, I get very different definitions of it depending on who I'm talking to. So how would you define agentic AI?
Yeah. What I would say to it is because I know there have been autonomous decision-making systems before, right? And that is not completely new. That has been around for many, many years now. And there's also been research on it and some things on it. Well, how I would try to describe it differently is when now it's not only about decision-making, but actions are being taken too. That's what makes it more agentic AI. And that's also puts the agency part into the agentic, right? Of actually acting on it. I would say even translating just like clicking on things on your behalf or like actually making transactions on your behalf, right? That would be then more agentic. So for me, it's more about like replacing not the human decision making only that was based on rules and like smarter ways of doing it, but also replacing the actions nowadays that you otherwise would have had to do very manually before. That's how I would describe it at least.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty close to my understanding. It's like the AI does stuff now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't just tell you what to do; it can do the thing that it suggested that you do in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit too about kind of the data foundation for AI.
Mhm.
What does a good data foundation for AI look like?
Yeah. I mean, I think with the good data foundation that you have the part of the infrastructure itself, right? As usual, like basically making data available in the right way and for it to feed into AI models and so on in the right way. But then you have the data itself from a readiness for AI point of view. And by that, I mean quality, of course, right? But in the new world of things, also things like bias, for example, right? And fairness and these kind of things where it's a lot more about if you're really gonna make decisions about human lives and based on human traits, how do we know if it's actually putting disadvantages towards certain people because of a bias that we had in the data, right? I think there was this case that's probably very famous, but when Amazon started trying to basically use AI to assess resumes, and they used historical data from the hiring behavior based on the resumes they had to then use a smart way to not having to manually screen all CVs anymore. It very quickly turned out that they were basically deprioritizing women, right? So because their own behavior was like they hired more men than women, basically with similar kind of qualifications, but for the roles. So of course, the model itself just was like, of course, then women are probably worse than men, so we're gonna always prioritize the men. And they very quickly had to shut it down. They couldn't even correct the bias anymore because they didn't have better data than that, right? And that is the typical case where you need to find out where the bias is and how you actually mitigate and prevent that bias in the very early on, if especially making choices that are based on human traits. So yeah, and I think one more point to it is only that, especially in the world of Gen AI and LLMs, etc., unstructured data now is a big thing, right? So you want to do RAG, you want to do fine tuning with like contextual data of your own organization, and a lot of it is about unstructured data. So how do you manage quality for unstructured data, right? It's how do you even make sure that how you measure what is correct and accurate and everything within unstructured data like PowerPoint files and PDFs, etc., and then make sure how it works there. And the ironic thing is, from what I've so far understood, is you may need to make unstructured data structured first, extract something structured from it, to then tag it in the right way until you can decide again if it's unstructured or not, right? But that is one more step to do, and that is costing a lot of efforts too, right? So yeah, that is, I think, one other open point that is really important to deal with nowadays.
How do you see metadata fitting into all of this? And we have concepts like the semantic layer made a big comeback in the last 3 or 4 years
Yes.
after
Yeah.
spending a decade in the wilderness as something
Yeah.
that people didn't even. I don't think young people even knew what it was. They heard about this
Yeah.
idea. They were like, "Whoa, what is this? This is crazy. This is brand new." And I'm thinking, like, well, that's what I used to do when I started my career. I was a semantic layer builder. We didn't call it that, but
Interesting.
that's
Okay.
basically what I did, right? If you look
Right.
at like the 2000s generation of business intelligence tools, they all had a
Right.
mandatory step that was creating a semantic layer.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
so how does that fit into AI? Do you feel, can you be successful in AI if you're not taking care to curate the metadata or build out maybe not a semantic layer tool, but at least have some semantic information for the AI to use?
Absolutely. I think because if you don't invest in a semantic layer and have that additional contextual metadata, then it's very descriptive but isolated to the different data objects that you have, right? But in the end, what's actually useful and what for AI use cases to actually make sense is the context itself. So I always think about the semantic layer being a representation of our human thoughts and what we think fits together and what it all means, right? So in a way, it's like the ultimate translation of human related to the specific data you're describing into like a model that makes sense. So artificial intelligence can actually imitate human intelligence, right? Otherwise, it's not really intelligence. It's just basically identifying objects one after another, but not realizing what it all comes together to. So it's more important than ever, right? And this is also how now, but with knowledge graphs and everything, all that now becomes bigger again because we're trying to imitate how we as human beings think, right? And how things fit together and how we associate things with each other, hoping that AI can do the same for us so we don't have to tell it to do it anymore, but it just does it smartly on its own.
It definitely feels like the knowledge graph community has just been waiting for 25 years, and now is their time. uh, it really
I mean,
does.
they might have even given up in between, and now they're like, "Oh my God, it's back!"
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, I really sense that. I mean, yeah, you see that. I see that at certain conferences I go to where that tend to attract knowledge graph people that, like, oh, this is a really well defined, understood area of study that suddenly
Absolutely.
finds itself really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah, another trend I saw recently coming back is the topic of human-machine interactions, right? Which has been a very much scientific topic too. But nowadays it has that very philosophical flavor too, right? Because now that chatbots can imitate human communication, the whole interaction with AI changes. Whereas we needed to learn a language of a technology first to talk to a technology, like SQL before. Now it's the other way around, where all of a sudden AI speaks our language. So how does that change our interaction model and how we actually are more risky or more confident in interacting with technology now? Which is very interesting because all of a sudden, like all of these very long existing disciplines now come back and they all have transferable kind of knowledge and insights for it. It's very exciting. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes me glad that I have the technology foundation I do, right? From that I've been, because a lot of the stuff I learned, I can remember. I worked at Oracle in 2015 for about a year, and I
Uh-huh.
can remember that the feeling then was that the way analytics would be done in the future would be that you would just stuff all the data as is into a data lake, and then you'd have a very thin visualization layer on top of it that
Mhm.
could just visualize that data from the data lake with no transformation, no semantics, no metadata, and that would be, that was the future of data and analytics. And I think we tried that and it just did not work at all. And so now
Right.
we're kind of back to, you look at what Joe Reese is doing with his, the new book he's working on
Data
metadata,
modeling, right?
on data modeling, and
Yeah.
these are all old ideas that are having a bit of a resurgence, I think, driven
Yeah.
not just by AI, but AI is a part of it for certain. So one of the questions I have for you then related to that is, where do you see, what are the best places to invest if you're on a data team and you want to quickly be able to add value in this new world of AI? What skills or technologies should you be investing in?
Yeah. I think, I mean, to the point of what we just discussed, right? Becoming more of a translator, I think, in all directions, it would be the right first thing to think about. And by that, I mean, first of all, let's say translating your institutional knowledge, for example, into knowledge graphs or some kind of metadata model, right? To actually make sense of it all and then map the data objects to it, because sooner or later that's going to be important anyway. Even just for traditional BI, it's better to have some kind of relationships between the objects and knowing what to navigate, right? And it's even more important now for AI as well. And the other thing is probably understanding conceptually how AI works, right? And doing things knowing that some things will be taken over by AI and some things won't. But as the sooner you kind of understand which part you need to rely on more in your own head and your own actions, and what you have to rely on AI in the future, the better you can now invest in learning the right things. What should not be doing is forgetting the hard skills completely and just thinking, hey, I will do it anyway and not do it. Because contrary to popular belief, right? If you don't have the subject matter expertise and you let AI generate things for you and you cannot check if it's correct or not, that's a huge risk, right? Because either way, there's always still going to be some mistakes, some kind of hallucinations. And even for vibe coding, we know that the disadvantage of it is that it's not the most efficient way of coding, right? It's just probably it works functionally, but it's not like long term probably doing the best thing for you if you are looking at it from different aspects. So yeah, that I think overall is the most important things.
How So one of the things that is unique about you is your background in music and the arts in the data world.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel that that has helped you in your career?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, very obviously, I got most of my reach at the very beginning of my musical data music career by posting data music and people just being surprised and delighted by what I did, right? That is probably more the personal branding side of it all that definitely helped me and that makes me very unique. But I do see a lot of parallels between being a musician and being someone who works in data, right? So, for example, you have solo artists and you have people that play in bands, right? And the difference itself when you're part of a band or like an orchestra, you need to play and listen to others at the same time, right? So that taught me a lot about teamwork, how to not just do my own thing, but also basically realize what the others are doing. So we're doing it in the same direction, right? Same as with different genres have different rules, right? In classical music, you follow what specifically the writer basically or the composer actually put in instructions. Whereas in jazz, you have a lot more improvisation. You jam around it. You put some guardrails on it, but you're free within those boundaries to do what you want, right? As long as everyone agrees to do it within, which is basically like prescriptive versus experimentative, right? And the last one also is about looking at data as a not creative field, is like looking at basically music as a not as a scientific field, whereas you could do both, right? Because with music you could also just look at the notes being different frequencies of sound, right? And rhythm just being like beats per minute, right? And that is also very mathematical, so that could be. But you could also look at it as art and something that emotionally somehow gets you, and that makes sense. So we could look at data as well as something that can emotionally actually make people relevant, as long as you translate it into insights or some kind of thing that's compelling, that you actually emotionally react to it and not just look at it as something analytical. So yeah, balancing both that kind of all of my musical persona with my data persona and basically choosing the best of both worlds has really helped you, I think.
How should someone approach that? If I agree that it's really important as someone who also has a background in the arts, and I think that, but I do wonder, like, what's the best approach? So someone hears, oh, like, there's this human side. I mean, the first answer is buy the book, right? Once again,
Yeah.
Humanizing Data Strategy. I have a link here if you wanna get Tiankai's book, you can check it out here with this link to Amazon. It's incredible. But if someone is, hearing this and they hear in the era of AI, the soft skills are going to be more important, the human skills are going to be more important. How would you recommend they go about developing those?
Wow, that's a good question. I think in one way or another, we all have it in us, right? Even the 5 C's from my book, they're all based on normal human traits. Like we all want to grow and learn normally. We all want to have some kind of human connection. And we don't like conflict, right? We want to actually work together on things, right? We want to communicate in the right way. We want to be creative and we want to do the right things from a conscience point of view. So it shouldn't be completely new for anyone to do it. I think it's more about the intention and doing it consciously, right? So if the only instruction or the advice I could give is just do it more intentionally, right, in your day to day. Realize that your interactions and how you show up as a person is important for your work as well, and not just what you deliver as artifacts and outputs, right? It's equally important on how you leave an impression, how you make other people feel, because that in the long run is the part that actually makes you stand out. So I would actually say just start being intentional. Look at how you behave every day, be more conscious. Look at how you could do better, how you could make others feel better too, and become kind of a role model for being more human, right? And hopefully you can become someone who is basically, yeah, let others be also more focusing on these things. I think then generally things would improve.
That's do you think that's hard for people in data sometimes? Like, do we get too wrapped up in the is the pipeline running and and lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day we're people interacting with one another and we have to be valuable to one another in that way, like
Yeah.
as people?
Yes, I think there is two sides to it, why that would be. One is, let's say the obvious side is personality, right? So if you're like a strong introvert and you really don't like to waste your energy on talking to people, and that's why you chose a data job in the first place, I completely get it, right? But even then, there's a small part of it that is required for you to show what you worked on and communicate in the right way, and also to get the right requirements in, right? So you're doing actually the right thing. So you cannot really avoid communicating or growing or learning more and doing the right thing. So even the small part that you don't have to increase, where you have human interactions and you need to think about the human side, you can improve that little part. But there's also the other side, which is the cultural part, right? Which is if the company culture is not the best and it's very toxic, right? And it's focusing on you working isolated and not communicating with everyone, or vice versa, they are incentivizing you to deliver more pipelines and not talking to anyone else, right? Because that's what you're measured by and get your bonus by. Then we have a big problem, right? Because there's no reason. It's even counterproductive to then be more human if you're supposed to be a machine on paper, right? So that is a bigger problem. I would not suggest anyone to stay in that company in that case, or if you can change the culture. But then you have the bigger factors, of course, right? If they're stopping you and you are the weird one in your organization trying to be more human, then it's probably not the right environment to try to be in.
It's definitely a case. If you are in that environment, I would say find a new job and then get them a copy of Tiankai's book as you're on your way out the door.
Without any words, just
Yeah.
like read this and then leave it.
Yeah, we do have a
Yeah.
request here. Kevin, friend of the show, Kevin Ducat. Actually, Kevin and I used to work together. When I started my
Nice.
career, Kevin was worked on the data warehouse team, and I was on the BI team, and we worked together very closely. But yes, Kevin, I will grab that link and drop it in the comments for you. So anybody who's interested in picking up Tiankai's book, there should be a comment in the LinkedIn.
Yeah. I just saw another one writing guilty in there. Is that guilty about being in the bad company or about something else?
Yeah, yeah. Good question, Miko. Let us know.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, this is definitely, I think, I'm very curious to see how the outputs were judged by change over time.
Yeah.
As AI gets better and better at creating pieces of the pipeline,
Hmm.
are you still judged by how well you can orchestrate that AI to deliver more and more pipeline, or does it start to become something else? And I think my hope is that it starts to become something else, and that, I mean, I really think this idea of data products in particular,
Hmm.
it is hotly debated. At the Day-to-Day Texas conference, we had a whole hour-and-a-half session where we just debated, like, what the hell even is a data product. And
Interesting. Yeah.
and it was both enlightening and to me a frustrating conversation, because, I mean, how do we know? I don't know. We spend a lot of time in data, I think, ruminating about who are we and what do we do. And I think, you
Yeah.
know,
I
other fields don't always do that. Like electricians know what they do, you know?
I know
Um,
what you're saying. On the other hand, maybe a contrarian point of view on
yeah,
this. I feel like we're investing too much time investing defining things and not just trying it out.
yeah,
And the reason why I'm saying this is even for data governance, for example, being a discipline that has existed forever now, there's still not one definition that everyone uses, right? It's still like, yeah, it's about risk mitigation, it's about accountability, it's about people, process, tools, blah, 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 all the things. But there's not like this one definition that everyone uses, right? And there never has been, that there probably never will be. And I feel like with data products, as long as you try to adopt product thinking on data and you do it your own way, as long as it works, then you have data products, right? But we do that all the time with things. I mean, I enjoy also the question you asked about what an AI engine is. And that is always the first thing where a buzzword comes, we don't really know what it means. And the reason for it is because it's new, but we kind of know the direction. But as a human factor, we try to have it very detailed as a definition, otherwise we cannot start. But probably in many cases, we have never needed it anyway, right? It was just about having that confidence to feel like a lot of people know what they're talking about. So I think I can get with it. So it's almost like a skeptic behavior to say, I need a definition first before I can start it. Although there probably are other factors that can convince you to get started too. But yeah, that's a little bit like I like talking about definitions. A lot of data governance is about actual, literal definitions of data and standards, right? So I kind of get it. But on the other hand, it's like with these concepts, if we agree on like a direction, then I think at some point it's good enough just to get started. And maybe we need to change definitions too, right? To then make it work. But as long as it works, right?
yeah. And yeah, I mean, I mean, I agree with you completely. And that's
Yeah.
one of the things that I find frustrating about the conversation around these terms, right?
Yeah.
Is the amount of time spent trying to define them,
Yeah. So
and
true.
what is a data product. And I have at the end of I think maybe the last episode of season 3 of Super Data Brothers, we have Jean-Georges Perrin coming on the show, who I think is like a, no, this is the definition of data products kind of
Absolutely.
guy. So we
Yeah.
might, Jean-Georges and I might get into that, but to me, it's as you said, right? Are you using product thinking? Are you trying to deeply understand the person who needs this data and what they're
Exactly.
doing with it? And are you using kind of a product thinking, product design process to deliver that? If yes, I don't care what you're delivering.
Exactly.
It's a data product.
Yeah.
Do you think that where do you think we are in terms of adoption of this way of thinking, this product and value thinking in data versus maybe a more traditional project or service orientation to our thinking?
Yes, I think that is also a part of the maturity curve, right? Because data products always also imply that the users of those data products know what they're doing, right? And that they know how to use, for example, those output ports and for the different reasons and how to do it. Which basically means data products is not coming with the service itself, but you kind of can use it and you can just trust it that whenever you are self-serving, basically using that data product, you're good. But you're flexible in it too, right? So a data product can still be used by the same people that created it, versus the data product can be used by other people as well. Either way, I think nobody could deny that product thinking on data is the wrong approach, right? I think that is one thing at least everyone agrees to. Um, but that itself was a game changer because it finally put value thinking on data and not just making it happen and like a technical outcome, but actually a business outcome too, right? And with product thinking, not only about thinking about the user, but thinking about the business value it brings, that is definitely here to stay, right? Because data as an asset being discussed has been many years now, but now there's finally a way to get there and actually treat it as an asset. And with AI use cases now being even more present, right? You even have a more direct, basically, channel to say through the AI use case, you kind of know what the value is that you're generating. So data plus AI together is going to help you do this. So the product thinking can even make more sense.
Yeah, and Miko says the thing that didn't work for her was she thought she could stay an introvert, and that did not work out.
Says Miko, who did a podcast himself. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah. Miko is the most extroverted introvert you will ever meet, I will say.
Exactly.
If Miko, if you're doing an impression of an extrovert, you are doing an incredible job.
Yes,
It's Oscar worthy. No, I love Miko. Her and I are good friends. Okay, so we've got about what do we have? About 7 minutes here. So listen, if you have questions for Tiankai, of course, get them into the comments, and I will read them for you. So, where do you think we go from here? Like looking forward, what are the top trends you see? Obviously, AI is a trend, but what are the top trends you see in data, and how do you think they're going to evolve over the remainder of this year and into next?
Yeah, I mean, actually, to that point, I think data products will become the new standard. I truly hope optimistically that we will stop discussing the definition of it and we just kind of move forward and we just start doing it right, right? It's more about the intention and trying to get better every day with data products than actually having to have that one prescriptive goal that we need to reach. And I think that that's definitely going to help because once data products and product thinking on data works, that will apply to having AI ready data products too, right? And that will then ideally fuel also more AI use cases that actually generating value. Overall, I think also, well, I truly hope also to see more agentic AI and MCP use cases happening actually this year, right? And on another note, yeah, maybe how do I phrase this best? But less of a reactive hype for compliance and more of a proactive ethical handling of things because I understand that like laws are always very pain in the butt, right, for many, and oh, now I have to comply to this. But I believe that if we proactively thought about it already and of doing the right things, and for example, for the UAI Act that I'm dealing with, if we had already a feeling and some kind of a structured approach to manage risk to each of those models, then we wouldn't need to do it only retrospectively, right? We would have thought about it already. So yeah, ideally we can all cross-functionally in our organizations make better ethical and basically societal decisions so we don't have to deal with compliance always as an afterthought only.
And we do have a question here from Michael Dunphy. Welcome back, Michael. He says, what are your thoughts on roles such as data curator, data product manager, data librarian, et cetera, that focus on domain knowledge and the interactions of data within an organization?
Yeah, no, I love that. Actually, a data curator or data librarian are words, synonyms are used for data stewards in the past because some organizations didn't like the word steward, so we had to be creative. So curator and librarian became those ones. Data product managers, of course, is very close to data product owners, right? Or you could also be a portfolio kind of manager of data products potentially if you have a lot of them. But those are all definitely very valid, right? As soon as you apply that product thinking, right, the more you need those interfacing roles as well to actually navigate you within those products, right? Like a guide that helps you to make sense of all the products that are there. And although you have a data catalog or a marketplace potentially, right, to make all of the data products available, it's always nice to still have that human touch that we started in the beginning, right? Of someone who can just quickly tell you, right, if you want to look for the data product, best would be put in the keyword of this in that marketplace, and then those few ones are probably the best to start with or something. So yeah, a really strong endorsement of those kind of roles.
That's awesome. I do see that like this, the data librarian is something I'm starting to see pop up a little bit, or this idea of applying library science to data, which I think is
With
both
Ola and Jessica, for example, right? Who are strong
yeah,
advocates.
yes, exactly. Yeah. Which I think is both fascinating and I'll probably hopefully turns into a great employment opportunity for people who studied library science.
Yeah.
Because I think it really, look, the challenges that humans have finding the right data to use for an analysis or to answer a question, AI will have the same challenge.
Right.
And if anything, the challenge is maybe more painful in a way because AI can do it so much faster, right? It can find the wrong data so much more efficiently
That is true. Yeah.
than a human being ever could, um, and oftentimes without the intuition, it doesn't have the intuition to say, something about this doesn't feel right.
I was just about to say that, right? Because we all know the feeling of walking into a really nice library, right? And being overwhelmed by how many books there are and how beautifully they're all structured on shelves and so on. But also just going around and exploring things, right? And the whole physical experience of going in a library is really nice. So in a way, library science, right, comes from that place because it started with physical libraries. And now it's digital, so that already removes a lot of the senses that we usually would apply on libraries. But let's imagine that AI will never have that reference, right? They will only have the digital part of things. They don't know how much we are applying our five senses to experience a library. So yeah, there's many interesting things about it.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Tiankai, thank you for joining us again here on the show. I love having you on. For everybody who's watching, of course, Tiankai is the author of Humanizing Data Strategy, Leading Data with the Head and the Heart. I totally endorse this book.
Thank you
I
so
think
much.
it the great thing about it, Tiankai, is not just that it contains great information, great suggestions, a lot of things you can really bring into how you operate as a data team or a data practitioner. But even the way it's written, I think, is very. It makes it easy to understand and easy to pull insights out of it. Very punchy little sections that are targeted on a particular idea or concept. Like my favorite, I think, is when you talk about co-creation in here.
Yeah.
As someone at the kind of the analytics and BI layer of the data stack, where the eternal debate at that layer is between self-service and let's build the reports for them.
Yeah.
And like your idea of co-creation, I just felt like was cutting, it's like Alexander cutting the Gordian knot, is how it felt to me as someone who has had this debate just forever. So
Right.
I fully endorse Tiankai's book. If you're on LinkedIn, you can look in the comments related to this episode to get a link to purchase. I will put that up on the screen now for you. So if you want to check out Tiankai's book, you can do it there. I think we have one last question. We'll try to get in, and then we're going to have to wrap things up here. So, of course, the LinkedIn integration is just not working properly today. Something is weird. So this is Aubrey Western asking, how soon do you expect agentic AI to replace data quality analysts, metadata managers, data stewards, and business data analysts for Fortune 500 companies and beyond? So it's kind of like, are we close to that as far as AI's capabilities?
That's a really good question. The thing why I'm struggling with that question is I understand the operational part and the routine part of those roles that can be replaced by AI, but there's also the original thought part of these roles, right? Even as a data quality analyst, you might need to think about if the definitions of a data quality standard make sense, right? Or if you need to actually change an existing rule or create a new data quality rule, for example, right? Same as for metadata, right? Does that require to change the values within a metadata attribute, or do you need to change the whole meta model itself to make it work? There's a lot of human critical thinking part that I don't think we can make agentic AI work for it. So those roles, I wouldn't say will ever be replaced. They might change, right? They might become more of a boss of agents kind of roles where they can basically manage a bunch of agentic workflows that help them, but they still need to create that original thought. And they might be able to do that more now that they have AI on their side to do the operational stuff. and be a little bit more creative and efficient at the same time.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me today, Tiankai. Be sure to tune in next week, same time, 12 o'clock Eastern time. We will be having Colleen Tarto on the show to talk about data career, how to choose the right place to work, particularly as it comes to startup versus tech versus enterprise. Colleen has worked in all three, so she has a really good perspective on how to navigate those sorts of choices. And I'm really looking forward to having her on. And of course, we have to thank the season 3 sponsor, Good Data. Good Data is an analytics platform tailored towards this product thinking that Tiankai and I have been singing the praises of here. When what you want to do is get close to your users and have an analytics platform that can take the insights, move it into the places where your users actually do their work, and then support the product and engineering workflow necessary to keep up with them as their needs evolve over time. Good Data is laser focused on that. So it's much more than just a BI tool. Check it out at gooddata.com. Tiankai, thank you for joining us. Where can people follow you?
Yeah, just on LinkedIn, and they can check out my YouTube channel as well, where I have more music videos about data, right? And those are the two.
You are data's biggest pop star. All right, thanks for joining me today. Until next week, everybody. I'm Ryan, and this has been the Super Data Brothers. Thank you for joining me again, Tiankai. Bye, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.